What's up everybody, I am Mongoose, you are awesome, and this is a Myths from Monolith Extra. What these are going to be are my own stories. They will still feature viewer-submitted replay. This one is from Lucifer is Good. This by no means disqualifies you from casting call. This just means I needed some Countess gameplay, and why not use viewer-submitted replay instead of my own. So that's what that's all about. I do want to warn you, this story has a bit of sexual content, so if you're listening to it at work, you may want to turn the volume down or use some headphones or something. Without further ado, let's get into possessions. Down on her knees, any hint of pride in herself long gone, she worked at pleasuring this fat merchant bastard. Her only request was that he let her know when he was going to finish. She could hear him beginning to climax and started to pull away. Rough hands grabbed the back of her head and forced her down. Hot seed gagged her throat while hot tears fell on her cheeks. This was not the life she was meant for. The daughter of a count, she should have been married off to a handsome young nobleman. Her father, however, had squandered the family's assets and reputation through alcohol and gambling. She was sold off to a rich peasant merchant in order to settle her father's debts. A forced marriage into luxury she was prepared for. Being forced to marry this slovenly, abusive son of a bitch, she was not. She hated him. She hated his servants. She hated his handsy guards. She hated her father, most of all. Lying on the floor at the foot of his bed like a dog, she was not allowed the comfort of the mattress. She attempted to find a position that didn't aggravate the many bruises and cuts all along her body. Every night before she attempted sleep, she prayed. Not for salvation, but for death. Death for herself and for everyone around her. The deep burning ember of rage within her called out to the void, and that call was answered. A heavy thump on the floorboards awakened her in the middle of the night. The bedchamber door stood ajar. She noticed a hooded figure waiting just outside. A hand raised and beckoned her forward. Whatever fresh hell this was couldn't be any worse than her current situation. Ignoring her aching body, she rose and followed. The next morning, the merchant awoke to find his bitch seated at the foot of the bed. At first, he was furious that she dare use his mattress without his permission. Then he noticed the tight leather garments. Perhaps she finally understood her place in life. He rose with a grin on his face, saliva dripping from the corner of his mouth. Quick as a flash, she unsheathed the sword and held it to his throat, cutting short his lecherous advance. His eyes widened in terror as the gravity of the situation pierced through the morning fog. He scrambled backwards, shouting for his guards. They burst into the room to find their master's whore armed and threatening him with murder. Before they could draw their swords, she disappeared from the bed and suddenly stood between them. With a flourish of spinning blades, they were both cut down. She inhaled their essence as it left their bodies, further invigorating her. A smile tugged at the corner of her mouth as she looked back towards the bed. The merchant used the opportunity to make a run for it. He lunged for the door on the opposite side of the room. Just as his hand closed around the handle, a scream rang out behind him. A scream that was so filled with rage, hatred, and despair that he was forced to turn. He looked upon her terrible screaming face. Eyes literally glowing with hatred, mouth agape, lips curled back to reveal oddly elongated canines. Her swords were raised in an exultation of victory. Then the blades slammed through his eyes, crossing through his brain and exiting his skull. She wiped the blood from her swords on the bed sheets as she took stock of the situation. She would of course go and find her father, claiming his head and her rightful place as the Countess. For that, she would have to eliminate the rest of the house staff. No one who had borne witness to her shame would be allowed to live. Her soul now belonged to Severog, but her body would always be hers. Hope you enjoyed today's story. If you did, kick that like button right in the dick and subscribe by clicking on the little mongoose at the bottom of your screen. If you want to submit a story to be featured on the regular Myths from Monolith series, you can email it to mongoosegg@gmail.com. If you want to hang out with me in Discord, it's linked in the video description below, as well as my Patreon if you want to donate a few bucks towards the betterment of the channel. But for now, this is Mongoose signing off. You guys have a good one.